You are listening to Comedy Club for Kids presents Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense. Porridge bottoms to you, and welcome to another Radio Nonsense, the official Comedy Club for Kids show suitable for all ages. Yes, everyone, look, I'll admit, I've now had so many nasty bits of parchment, or things carved into slate, or weird bards coming around to sing a message from angry 100-year-olds about how they aren't allowed to listen to the show and how discriminatory and unfair that is, and one even said that they'd all had a chat and decided that unless I let them listen to this show when I'm 100, they won't let me have any of the special 100-year-old sandwiches that you get given from the Royal Warden of Pickle. And that was when I had to give in, as I don't want to have a terrible 100th year of my life, and I really want those sandwiches, even though they're probably really gone off and very disgusting. So, look, this Radio Nonsense podcast is now suitable for everyone of all ages, even 100-year-olds, but just definitely no yaks, because they're too silly. They're too silly. Look at them. Ridiculous. I'm still Tiernan, even though I've tried my best not to be, and this is the last in this season of Radio Nonsense podcasts, before we have a little break for me to go and do lots of important things, such as complain that there's nothing good to watch on the television while I stare at the microwave, and shout, "I can see you, stop trying to hide," at the tree outside our window. If you're listening to this when it comes out, then you've probably been stuck at home now for over 6 weeks, which is a lot, and I hope you're doing okay. If you're listening to this in the future, then beware of the robots! But either way, you're probably all out of ways to annoy those stretchy, wrinkled scarecrows that wander aimlessly around your home. Sorry, grown-ups. I mean grown-ups. If you're out of ideas about how to bother them, try simply this. Look at them right in the eye and say, "Wow, how long has this lockdown gone on for? Because you're looking really old." And then pat them on the head, say, there, it'll be okay," and walk off. It will haunt them for weeks. You're welcome. Even though we're having a break on this podcast for a few weeks, please do send in any questions you might have, and I'll save them for our next season, which will start in the not-too-distant future. Beware of the robots! Details on how to do that at the very end of the show, but now for the important bit.
Pickle every day.
I am joined by the wonderful Helen Duff. Helen, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. I'm actually smashing. I think it's mainly because I've been making a lot of flapjacks, or as I like to call them, Jack's flaps. And I imagine that I've pulled them, these flapjacks. We all know what a flapjack is, right? Like a square, oaty biscuit cake. I've pulled the flapjacks out of Jack's flaps, and Jack is the kind of person who, you know, when you cut people out of paper and they have tiny tabs on the edges of them so that you can attach jumpers and trousers and pants to them.
Yes.
Yeah. I imagine that I've lifted those up, and out of the edges, the gaps, the flaps, if you will, I've pulled flapjacks.
Well, does that make them taste better, or does it make them taste weird?
It makes them taste tasty. It's both sweet, slightly salty, a little bit of a snap, and an extra bit of Jack.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. So Jack's flaps, and poor Jack. Does Jack feel all right about this? Because I'd sort of imagine if you're going about your day, you know, already life's hard because you got all these tabs on you, so you can't just put on the clothes you want. You have to have help doing it.
Yeah, you have to have extra.
And then suddenly someone's pulling cakes out of your person.
Well, I think what's important to remember is that when somebody has flaps, they are generally on either side of the torso, at the tops of their shoulders, potentially beside their ears, and never out of the bum.
Ah, good. I'm pleased to hear it, because that would be, you wouldn't want a Jack's flaps out of Jack's bum. You
wouldn't want a flapjack, or you wouldn't want a flapjack out of Jack flaps, bum flap. Jack flaps.
No.
But
no bum flaps. No bum flap cakes. Please.
No flapjack bum flap. No.
Wow. Well, you've been very busy with your oat cake. I keep calling them cakes. They're not, are they? Flapjacks or Jack's flaps are definitely not cakes. They are
They're a tray bake
creations.
They're a tray bake, is what they are. They're baked in a tray
bake.
Even if you bake them in a circular tin, technically it's still a tray. Apparently.
Do you call your tray bakes bake trays?
No, I call
Okay.
them neither because I think it's an American phrase, a tray bake. I would rather stick to a tea time treat.
Oh, I like that. That's nice. And there's lovely alliteration there going on as well. Tea time treat. It just feels nice to say.
Very true.
Yeah, that is good. Well, I was gonna. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. I was sort of. You've been stuck at home, obviously, like everyone else. Have you been sort of finding good ways to keep yourself entertained? I mean, you've already told us one way, but I wonder if you've got any really good tips for the listeners of things they can do if they're getting a bit bored.
I was always very bad as a child at keeping up instruments. I tried all sorts of different instruments, piano, violin. I did the drums for a bit when I was 15, and my mum was always super understanding whenever I said, I don't like it anymore because I couldn't be bothered to practice. She just let me give up immediately. And now I've been rediscovering the joy of making music because I've just been going about the house, finding different objects to turn into instruments.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
So can you tell us which objects have you found are particularly good as instruments?
I've turned the house into a huge orchestral bonanza. So, for example, obviously you've got your mugs for little bits of tapping with a fork or a little spoon. You've got your plants for rustling, and sometimes they sing. You can also endow certain objects that don't have a sound that you like when you hit them. You can endow them with voices. So, the toilet, for example, it makes a sound when you flush it, but it also speaks with a sort of wet, squelchy, I'm very tired type voice.
Yeah, I bet it would be. Toilets must be very tired. They never really get a rest. So.
Never. They're constantly on. Even if they're not on up top in terms of taking deliveries, there's stuff happening in the back room,
Yeah,
in the sewage quarters.
it's a hard life. So I think you got that toilet voice. That sounds exactly to me like how a toilet would speak.
Oh, I'm so tired.
Yeah, that feels spot on. That feels spot on. So apart from a toilet, have you got any? I wondered if you've got like a favorite one that you've discovered.
A favorite one that I've discovered. I've got a vase which had some tulips in it, and it was interesting because obviously it joined in with any kind of orchestral concert I was putting on during the week, but progressively the tulips that it was holding died, withered and
Oh,
died. So to start off with, it would sing with a sort of I am so excited by the joyful jubilation blooming inside of me. And then around the middle of the week, it started to get a bit raspy because they needed more water. Please give me something fresh. So I did. I changed the water. It went back to be jubilantly joyful. Now I'm full of fresh and blooming water flowers. And then once the tulips had really dried up because the sun was quite strong, it just became very quiet and mournful. I
oh,
wish I was a flapjack. You'd love me so much more. I wish I
oh.
was a flapjack. I'd rather be a flapjack than a small coffin. So it got very sad. Got a bit sad. Yeah.
Wow, that did get very sad. Yeah, I mean,
Very sad.
even I have to say, even in the way like earlier in the week, its lyrics were really beautiful and poetic. Towards the end, it struggled with rhymes there, and it just
Struggled
sort
with
of.
rhymes. I think it also doubted itself. It didn't know whether it was allowed to mention coffin on a kids podcast. So we could always change that later if it needs to be
It's
changed.
coffins are fine. That's what vampires live in. So
Of course,
we all know what they are. And also, if you've got a cough, then you do some coughing.
that's
So
true.
it is absolutely fine as a word for this podcast. And I normally on this show, on all previous episodes, I've asked guests for a favourite noise, but I think you've already given us so many
That's
that we
true.
don't need that unless you've got another one that you'd like to give us, in
Well,
which
I
case that's
didn't
fine.
mention mulch. I love
Mulch.
mulch. I love the
Mm.
word mulch, but also I love what mulch is. So, for example, porridge, the sticky mulch that you get when a porridge is really mulched itself up over a long, long cook. Do you
And
know what
how
I
does
mean?
that sound?
It's sort of like a squelch, but also with a kind of clogginess. So probably along the lines of like. I don't think I got
That's
it
an
quite right. It's
incredible
more like,
noise.
no, that's a kiss. It's tricky.
Well,
It's very tricky to
that's
do a mulch
difficult
with
because
the human
it's
mouth.
mulch, not squelch, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's hard to do a mulch, not a squelch.
Maybe that's why I like it, because the human mouth can't mulch. Only
Wow,
other
that's
things
brilliant.
can.
Well, that's very good. I like the mulch. Well, I was gonna say that because you've given us quite a few noises,
Mm,
and we then discussed whether you can say coffin on a children's podcast.
mm.
I was gonna just double check because this show is suitable for all ages, and in fact, this episode, unlike previous episodes, is even suitable for 100-year-olds because they've been complaining. But I just wondered if there is a rude word that you promised you won't say for
Yes.
this episode, so that it is suitable for all ears of all sizes.
I absolutely 100% swore to myself and also to my grandmother, who is 86, and I was just speaking to before I started chatting to you, Tiernan. I promised Grandma Duff that I would not say the word tutti frutti.
Oh. Oh no! Don't say that. Can you say that again?
Tutti
Oh
frutti.
no!
It's
That's
too
really
much.
offensive.
So awful. I can't believe it. It's both tropical, slightly Italian, with an edge of tutti frutti.
Oh no! Ugh! Goodness! No. Well, I mean, if you put that on this podcast, I don't think anyone would be allowed to listen to it.
That's true. I imagine most of the listeners would never have even heard that word, let alone said it themselves.
But I think even on just hearing it, were that word to get to their ears, were tutti frutti to hit their ears, I think they'd be arrested by police
How does
instantly
it
because
make
that's
you
what
feel in
happens.
your How does it make you feel in your skin when you say tutti frutti?
Like my skin fell off. It was like
Really?
as I said it, my skin just like threw itself out the window
Oh
and
wow.
landed on a bird. Like that's how it felt because it was so appalled
And
by
when it
its
landed on the
existence.
bird, did the bird then take on human form, or did it just carry around a human skin sack for the rest of its days?
Yeah, it sort of looked like a very baggy human, but it was
Mm,
being sick because it had also heard the word through the window. So it's
right.
just like it looked like a sort of a boneless flying human was being sick everywhere. I mean, look, a lot of people are being quite distressed now,
Chicken,
and I
like
just
a chicken fillet flying through the sky, vomiting, and the word tutti frutti echoing
yeah.
as it goes.
Yes. Well, look, thank you for not saying it on the show, and
Absolute pleasure.
please, could no one say it? I won't say it. I won't
No,
say tutti frutti, and you don't say it. And
I will be happy never to say tutti frutti again.
excellent. That's very good. Good. I'm very pleased. Ugh. Ugh. Right. Well, the most important thing, obviously, apart from the words you won't be saying and your favourite noises, is that we've had two questions sent in for this week. Both are very important, and I think that you're the exact person that knows the answers to these, which is why I brought these questions to you. I know you're a specialist in both of these subjects. So the first one is from Betty in Devices, which I believe is the place. I don't think she lives in like a little device. Um,
Mm,
I don't know. She might live in a small, like, pocket watch or something, but I don't
yes,
think so.
or just devises a lot of experimental theatre.
Oh, possibly, yes. Or evil plans. You can devise an evil plan, can't you?
Absolutely. You can also devise architectural drawings for buildings.
Mm. Oh, well, possibly she's an evil architect, theatre creator, and is doing all three at
I think
once.
we've
We
got
don't
too
know.
many of those. There's far too many of those already, Tian, and we can't be doing with another evil experimental theatre architectural building deviser.
Well, Betty, if you are one of those, I'm sorry to let you down. There's already too many, so you have to find a new career. But I mean,
Inundated.
to be fair, she's seven. It says 7 years in brackets. So again, I don't know if that's she's done the job for 7 years, or she's been in devices for 7 years. We don't. I don't know quite what she means by it. But her question, I'm very pleased to say, isn't about being evil or theatre or architecture or
Hmm.
devices. It is simply, and I mean, I'm gonna. Helen, I just want to warn you because just even reading this question out loud makes me a bit frightened at the
Mm.
possibility. I just want to warn you, but Betty has asked, what if there was no such thing as chocolate?
Sorry, I just wanted to give you an example there of what would happen if there was no such thing as chocolate. You heard the silence?
I mean, yeah, I felt it. I felt the
Yeah.
silence.
You felt the heavy, heavy weight of the silence. Well, Betty, I'm glad you've had a direct experience of what life would be like if there was no such thing as chocolate. We would have no words. Language itself was born from the experience of licking a lovely bit of chocolate on the tongue and having to say, because there was no other way to get the excitement out, ooh, 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 what a tasty treat.
And that's how words began.
That's how words began. The dinosaurs, when they had a little munch on a chocolate tree, having only ever eaten cabbages before that point, that's when they started chit-chatting. And from there, it was a direct line to Coronation Street.
Wow. And what sort of chocolates did dinosaurs have? I'm guessing they'd have gone for something like a Lion Bar, maybe, or something more knobbly like
Maybe,
that.
maybe a Lion Bar, a Rocky Road, a Yabba Dabba Delicious. I think they were also big fans of the Tyrannosaurus Toblerone.
Oh, wow. How did they unwrap those, the Tyrannosaurus? They've only got little hands. That must have been quite tricky for them.
Yes, obviously you can use a nail to pierce any plastic wrapping that they have been encumbered by, despite it being prehistoric ages and the sort of things that we now are drowning in, aka plastic wrapping, were not such an issue. I actually don't think I don't think that as a question is a valid question. I don't think they had to worry about unwrapping the chocolate because it was growing off the trees at that point. It hadn't been, yeah.
I'm so sorry. In my head, I assumed a Tyrannosaurus Toblerone would be in a giant Toblerone package, a bit like the ones in you get in airports, that are just huge.
Yes,
That's what I
no,
assumed it would be like.
I'm so sorry to shut you down imaginatively in that place that you've gone to. In fact, Tyrannosaurus Toblerones were so called because they were sort of like pyramids, the shape and size of an Egyptian pyramid, but just at the back of a Tyrannosaurus's garden.
Wow.
So they just have a
Wow,
nibble.
I could definitely eat one of those.
Oh, yeah, you could. You could eat one of those for at least 65 years of your life and still not get to the bottom of it.
That sounds like my ideal life. I'd
Yeah.
love to spend 65 years eating a chocolate pyramid. That would be amazing.
And the great thing about dinosaur prehistoric chocolate was because it was still technically growing, it didn't get that grainy white texture that old chocolate does if you hide your Easter egg for too long.
That's amazing. I mean, this
Does
sounds
that
incredible. And so
Have you ever
it's
experienced the white chocolate?
it sounds a bit like chocolate's not as good now.
It's in no way as good. If you imagine a chocolate that would lead to an entire language, let alone language itself, all languages being born, that's what we're dealing with then versus now, a Freddo.
Yeah. I mean, what has Freddo done for anyone? Like, what has a Freddo? Has anyone ever eaten a Freddo and come up with a brand new word?
Probably a few like Fudda Bomba.
Yeah, it's probably like just not very good words like parp or something like that.
Choc.
Yeah. Freddos. Yeah. Well,
Ugh.
and so if there was now, because language has now been developed thanks to the dinosaur chocolate, if chocolate went away, would everything be reversed then?
I think so, because the continued consumption of chocolate is what allows us to continue tapping into the life source and force that is language. So it's like every time we have a minstrel or a Malteser or a chocolate finger, maybe even a little tiny square of dairy milk, we are sucking at the fountain of language.
Wow.
We're lapping up words.
I mean, also, what I feel like you're saying is if children are listening and they're not eating chocolate right now, they could really improve their vocabulary and everything probably by having some chocolate.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, chocolate nowadays is a lower grade quality and force, sort of power, you might want to say, to what it was when it was first discovered by the dinosaurs. But it still elicits some expressions of joy, emotion, inspiration. People still have a bite of a Kit Kat chunky and say something along the lines of, "Oh, I think I've discovered the theory of relativity."
Yeah, yeah, I hear that happen all the time. It's
It
when
happens all
she,
the
you know,
time.
yeah, once you go out, past a Smiths or a newsagent, someone's having a bite of Kit Kat chunky, and suddenly they're just algebra all over the place, and or the
Yeah,
Shakespearean monologues. It's quite impressive.
absolutely. Cures for all sorts of dangerous diseases absolutely led back to a tiny bite of a flump. That's not even a chocolate,
Wow,
is it?
it's not a chocolate, but I mean maybe it was in dinosaur times, and we've now got a reduced non-chocolate version.
Possibly because there were so many amazing discoveries made as a result of eating chocolate flumps. They had to strip them of their chocolate because they just thought we can't carry on at this rate. We'll have finished humanity if we keep cracking the code all the time like this.
Well, maybe that was it. Maybe they have to hold something back, otherwise
Mm,
it would be too much. That makes sense. That does make sense. So for Betty there, her question is, what if there was no such thing as chocolate? I mean, really, there would be nothing, and we should be very grateful that chocolate exists.
absolutely. There'd be no questions like what if there was no such thing as chocolate. We wouldn't even be able to conceive of that question without the words to formulate it.
Wow. Well, thank you, chocolate. Thank you, chocolate,
Thank
for
you,
being
chocolate.
very grateful. Yeah, very
Mm.
grateful. Wow. Well, I don't know if Betty was expecting quite such an amazing answer. I don't know if she knew that the scale and the impact that chocolate has had on our lives. But there you go, Betty. And we've had another question. And I don't know. I don't know how big this one's going to get, but this is from Cecily. Cecily in Device again. She's also in Devices. I don't know if that's she's in Devices for 10 years. So I don't know if that means she's been living in a pocket watch for longer, or she's been coming up with evil architecture theatre for longer than Betty.
Are they both in the
Who
same
knows?
pocket watch?
Sorry,
Are they both in the same pocket watch, coiled up together?
I don't know. I don't know if they must be quite small, otherwise that would get quite uncomfortable.
That's true. I hope you're well, Betty and
Yeah.
Cecily.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I hope you're all right. Do let us know. Well, I mean, I think they are because they've asked you. Betty asked you that amazing question, and wait till you hear Cecily's amazing question, which is, why do birds poo when they're flying?
Fascinating question. Thank you for this one, Cecily. I don't have to answer silence because it's got nothing to do with the birth of language. Birds poo when they're flying because, very simple, they get too weighed down otherwise and they can't reach the treetops. If you see a bird that is flying very low, it's because it's utterly constipated.
Wow.
Yeah,
So just
the
full of
more
poo. So like when you see like a pigeon walking around, it's because it's full of poo.
full of poo. Birds that can't get off the ground are generally struggling with serious blocking up issues. They're blocked right up.
I mean, this is fascinating. So emus and ostriches, which can't
Mhm,
fly, full of
mhm.
poo.
Full of poo, full of pew, full of poo. Uh, they are they are similar to penguins. People think penguins are cute, often praised. David Attenborough did a whole program about. At no point did he mention, because actually Attenborough is quite squeamish about poo, that they are in a lot of pain because they haven't pooed in about, I don't know, an entire lifetime.
Well, I mean, because I was going to say, oh, but penguins swim, but I guess poos float, don't they? So that makes
That's
sense.
true, but it wouldn't be an issue anyway because they're not coming out of the penguins, are they? They don't get into the water to have that would be disgusting. That would be absolutely filthy.
It
To
would
have
be
to see.
disgusting, but I was worried that why the penguins aren't so weighed down that they sink. They can swim, but I guess maybe the poos sort of keep them floated above the.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Though they don't help to elevate the penguins above the earth into the air, they are buoyant in the water.
Right, that makes sense. That makes sense. Wow, and so and but I guess like they poo while they're flying, don't they? They don't sort of like while they're on the floor, they don't poo and then suddenly lift off. They do it mid.
No,
They
it's
manage to
like
get going.
progressive. Yeah, it's like progressive. Have you ever seen a space rocket going up into outer space? Like
Yes, I
the
have. Yes,
launching of Apollo 13, for example. As it
yes.
goes, it drops little bits of the the apparatus that was required to propel it up to the sky. So it started off with all this paraphernalia around the base to push it off to propel it up, the first kind of lift off bit, and then as it goes, it dropped bits of the rocket that aren't required the higher up it gets. That's the same with birds, except instead of kind of NASA built engines and propellers and all sorts of apparatus, it's poo.
Wow. Wow. I mean, it must be quite. I mean, it's now that you sort of mention this, I don't think I've ever seen a bird taking off, and that must be quite an
Mm.
incredible sight. If it's like a rocket taking off, but with poo, that's going to be quite impressive.
It's amazing that they managed to hide it so well. It's not necessarily it's not like a pellet situation. It's not like they're firing out poo at a rate of knots. It's sort of slow motion in a way, which makes it all the more remarkable that we don't see it. I think there's a special thing that happens where it becomes maybe transparent as it exits the bird, and we only spot it when it occasionally lands on us. And that's why people say it's lucky if a bird poos on your shoulder, because that poo has helped the bird to get up into the air. Then that's a lucky thing to do. Flying
That's
high, birds in
amazing.
the
I
sky.
also wonder if there's something about if they poo on the ground, maybe it's sort of transparent because it hasn't hit through all the different levels of the sky that maybe poo in the sky has. So maybe it gives it character and color.
Right. So all the time walking through sky that's just thick with bird poo, and we don't know about it because it's turned transparent.
Well, that's it. That's it. Which
Is
is
that a
it's
sunset? Is
fantastic.
that what sunsets are?
Oh wow, maybe sunsets are just when the bird poo reaches its sort of peak, and then it's nighttime just when the sky is full.
Right. It kind of burns like the rocket,
Hmm.
sets
Until the
alight.
morning when all the poo's burnt and it's daytime again.
What a joy. A whole day, a whole new fresh day to start filling with transparent bird poo.
Yes, that's fascinating. But I suppose the only confusing thing there would be that in the summer there's more birds, but it's lighter for longer. But in the winter there's less birds, but it's
Hmm.
darker for longer.
Well, I don't see that as confusing at all. It makes complete sense to me. The more birds there are, the more bird poo there is to light up the day at the end of it. So if we're saying
Right.
that it's almost like, when uh what am I imagining here? You might have to help me this, Tin, and in like a kitchen, a restaurant kitchen, when flies go into one of those big lights. They have those big lights that are designed for catching flies, and flies
Yes.
fly into them, and then the light kind of buzzes and crackles because the flies are hitting the heat element, and it like flashes. Do you see what
Yes,
I
I,
mean?
I know what you mean. I can't. I don't entirely know what they're called. I think they're called like flycatcher lights. I think they're called something very boring.
So they light up, they kind of burn almost when the fly buzzes into them, just to signal we've got another fly. Great. I think it's similar with the sky. So the more poo that kind of hits the sun and creates a dazzling sunset, the more light that's created. So the more birds that are flying, the more poo that's being pooed, the thicker the air becomes with poo, the more poo that hits the sun, the more light that's generated from the fire that's created by the poo burning in the evening light, the longer the day extends because obviously of the fallout of just that burning process.
Wow. I mean, again, I didn't. I mean, I knew birds were important. Don't get
Mm.
me wrong. I knew they're important because I think all wildlife is important. But I didn't know birds were that important that they are pivotal to how our days are.
I think often what happens is people like Cecily and Betty ask piercing questions that nobody else is prepared to ponder. And that's when we really come up against the big truths that are keeping us all alive. And sometimes I think adults especially don't want to look at those, don't want to look at the big truths, because it's quite scary to realise that we depend on bird poo for light and we depend on chocolate for language.
Yeah. Well, of course it is. I mean, I find it quite scary thinking about it, and it's easier for me to just pretend maybe that doesn't happen because it's just easier, isn't it? It's easier to cope with that. But just out of interest, before we move on, bats fly. Do bats poo in the sky as well, or bats got a different system? I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but just a quick one.
No,
is that the same thing?
Interesting caveat. Bats don't poo at all. Their tiny, tiny bodies are far, far too skeletal to carry any excrement.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is it all farts?
They go about at night time.
Yes.
I think farts only become an issue for them when they have a heavy night on chickpeas.
Fair enough. Well, I can fully understand that. Fully understand. Wow. I mean, Helen, that has been a fascinating answers. Thank you so much. And I can't quite believe the depths we went to there. I feel like Betty and Cecily should be very happy with those answers. I mean, unless they're coming up with evil devices, then I worry that we've given them too much information and they might use that against us.
We've really unlocked the universe for their mad genius to act upon.
Yeah, I'm a bit scared. This might well be the last podcast that ever happens.
This could be Despicable Me 3, couldn't it? Or 4 or 5. I'm not sure which Despicable Me we've got to.
I think it was sort of 12, something like that. There's a lot of despicable people. Yeah, possibly. Right, well, thank you so much, and I'm so glad I came to you with those questions. I knew you'd know the answers. And have you got a nice rest of the day planned with your Jack Flaps?
Yes, I'm doing a Eurovision, an alternative Eurovision song contest this evening, which I'm really looking forward to, with a song that I performed on Comedy Club for Kids about how high your trousers go. So after that event, I'll be releasing the video, so I'm really looking forward to putting that out.
That is very exciting indeed. Look forward to watching it.
Ooh.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Helen. That was brilliant.
Pleasure.
Pickle every day.
Thanks so much to Helen for that, and what an episode to end this series of radio nonsense on. We now know, thanks to Betty and Cecily's brilliant questions and Helen's incredible answers, just how language began and how the daytime works, and it's all to do with chocolate and bird poo. Who knew? Well, Helen did, so I'm glad I asked her. I hope, Betty and Cecily, that you're happy with that and will continue to devise evil theatre architect plans. Right, that's it for now, but this podcast will be back very, very soon. So please do keep sending us questions about absolutely anything that you'd like to hear answered on the next season, and you can do that by asking one of those stretchy, wrinkled scarecrows, grown-ups, to help you email us at podcast@comedyclub4kids.co.uk, and that's the number 4. You can also send in any jokes you'd like me to read or anything else you fancy telling me and the team at Comedy Club for Kids all about. Do check our website, comedyclub4kids.co.uk, for all info on online shows and real ones whenever they start again, and make sure you're grown up. Subscribe to this podcast so you'll know when we start up again. Also, if they fancy buying me and the CC4K team a coffee for teaching you such wisdom as dinosaur pyramid chocolate or birds being weighed down by poo, then they can do that at ko-fi.com/comedy club for kids. Radio Nonsense will return soon. Don't forget to keep 2 meters away from people unless they're your brother or sister, in which case that's not far enough, and they'll just have to go really, really far away to make sure, possibly another country or space. Bye! You have been listening to Comedy Club for Kids presents Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense, Radio Nonsense. It's the